Welcome to the Waterpeople podcast. This episode is presented by the Pryor Family Foundation in partnership with Greening Australia, who believe that our personal, social, and economic well-being are inextricably linked with our land and sea. Greening Australia works to restore Australian land and waters to produce healthy, productive landscapes where people and nature thrive. Learn more about their work via greeningaustralia.org.au. Our podcast comes to you from the coastal land and waters of both the Bundjalung and Kabi Kabi nations. We'd like to acknowledge these traditional custodians and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. We'd also like to extend that respect to all First Nations people this podcast ripples out toward. Today, we're sharing a live recording from the 2020 Byron Bay Surf Festival, where we hosted a room full of waterfolk to hear stories on the theme of starting over and the sea. From 1993 World Champion Pauline Menczer, Switchfoot master Raf Browne, Vanlife Diaries creator and musician Jonny Dustow, and one of our own local elders, writer Rosalie Bryant. They share about great victories, mental health crises, devastating loss, ego smashing, and the ways the ocean has turned the tide to allow for new beginnings. We love these live events and can't wait to hold more of them when the time is right. But for now, we hope you enjoy this spectral session of live storytelling from the Waterpeople stage.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here on a beautiful sunny day. This time last year at the festival here in Boring Bay, we got to have a live session like this.
Yeah, we had our very first.
Great.
It was our first live recording, and wow, that was an intense time for me. We'd just come back from Florida visiting my mom, and so I got up on stage and talked about how my mom had just had her leg amputated, and it was this crazy whirlwind of 3 months in the hospital with her, living between hospital and hotel in the middle of Florida, trying not to go crazy and, just trying to support her the best that we could. And she got through that crisis, and then just a few months ago, we were on our way to camp for a spell, and right before we got onto a remote island, I got a call from my mom saying that now she had cancer, stage 4 cancer, inoperable. So we decided to go ahead, get on the island, create some space, have a bit of time out. And it made me think about new beginnings. And that's our theme tonight, starting over, stories of starting over in the sea. And I was thinking about how my mom felt like she had this new, fresh start after going through such an intense health crisis and then to have to face another one. So I was just laying on the ground under a beautiful tree and marveling at leaves' brilliance in the way that they photosynthesize. They turn light energy into other forms of energy. And I was thinking about how miraculous surfing is and how it kind of does that for us, right? We can go into the ocean so threadbare, so empty, so feeling so empty, and magically transform the mana of the ocean into another kind of energy, something that enlivens us and lightens us, and it's kind of like a metaphysical hydrosynthesis of sorts, like transforming that energy. So I wanted to gather people this afternoon to share stories of starting over, because at some point we all face those sort of critical turning point moments, and how will we know what to do if we haven't heard, other people's stories and what the options are to sink or to swim? So that's where we wanted to dive in this afternoon. Do you have a story about starting over?
Yeah. Likewise, last year I told the story of how my dad took his life and ended a life of suffering and trauma and fun and craziness and all kinds of stuff, and how I went surfing on his coffin lid and we did all kinds of stuff to get through the weird dark comedy that his departure was. But also, just after he split, we went to an island to go surfing and try and decompress. And for me, a restarting moment was I actually had this really weird period for about 2 weeks or so where I just could not do anything right in the ocean. I was trying to surf, and we were in Hawaii actually, and I was trying to surf some big waves, and I would just fall on every takeoff or paddling back out. The one random wedge that would come from the channel would land right on my head, or every drop of water seemed to land in my eye. Everything was going wrong, and I just couldn't do anything right. And I was still in such a spin from my dad splitting, and then all of a sudden, this one afternoon, I got to my feet and I went down the line and I didn't catch a rail, and I somehow managed one clean turn. And it's the only turn I have in my repertoire anyway. It's a cutback, but I managed this one clean turn, and it was like the water that was coming off the rail of my board was all of the trauma and the emotion of what I'd just been through, and it was just sheeting off over the side of the wave, and I was fine. Everything after that was okay. And so that was a weird moment of just a redirection of speed in the ocean had this transformative effect. So I reckon that was my kind of new beginning sort of moment that we're talking of. And actually, it kind of brings me to our first guest speaker, and that is Pauline Menczer. And Pauline is a local from this area and an incredibly accomplished surfer, 1993 World Champion, an amazing and resilient woman who I actually first heard of as a little grommet in the early 90s when she was, at the height of her surfing powers perhaps, or was, because she was winning the world title. But my dad actually told me about Pauline and her ability to overcome arthritis and physical challenge to reach the top of her game. And I remember just seeing that my dad had this really deep respect for her, that she could do so much on a surfboard in the ocean, and at a time where it was just a complete sword fight. It was only men, it was men's room only in surfing. And here's this little firecracker who just took no shit and just got it done and surfed amazingly and did it all while also going through some serious physical illness. And so, we wanted to bring up Pauline to talk story and hear from her. So please make her feel welcome.
Hi, Pauline.
Hi, thanks for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. It's all ours. Can you tell us a story of starting over? You've had many new starts, wild starts, I'm sure.
Yeah, Lauren contacted me last week to say, would I like to talk about starting over? And I said, oh my God, what one do I pick? I've started over many times and had many challenges. So I thought, okay, I'll go to 1993 when I was, I think it was maybe my 6th year on tour as a professional surfer. And it started at Bells Beach, and it was the beginning of the tour. And back then it was called the ASP World Tour. Now it's called the WSL. And I remember, I think I was against Lisa Anderson in the final at Bells Beach and ended up winning. So I was like, okay, I feel like this is my year. I've started with a win, and I think we had 12 or 14 events, and I just felt like it was the time. I felt like I was surfing well. And we went from there to, I think there's a few events in Australia. Forgive me if I forget. I was on a tour for 20 years and went around many times, so I kind of get my events mixed up. So to get to where I was in 1993, to travel around the world, I still didn't have any sponsors. So to pay for my tour, I would do things like, for instance, I was in America and at the time Levi jeans were a hit. So I'd buy like 30 pairs of Levi jeans, and I found this really cool, like, long bike and thought, yeah, I think I could sell that in France. So I thought, I'll collect all these things, and that's how I'll support myself for each event. So basically...
How did you get that on a plane?
Back then, British Airways let you bring 2 bags. It didn't matter what size they were. So I had my suitcase in my board bag and then the bike. And then I even would get things like a lot of stickers, because I'm like, yeah, I can make money out of stickers and they're light. So I just get anything I can to make money. And basically, most of my career I was unsponsored, so that's how I would survive, is just wheeling and dealing. And so I'll go back a little bit further. I have 2 sets of twins in our family, so I have a twin brother and 2 older twins. And our mum brought us up in a way of really being survivors. So she's a single parent. My father and grandfather were killed when we were very young, and so it was just her bringing us up. And so for our pocket money, my mum would go, right, street clean-up's on. You 2 on that side of the road, you 2 on that side of the road. Get whatever you can find out of the street clean-up and we'll have a garage sale. So basically that's how I learnt to survive. And my first surfing contest in Western Australia, I had to get a ticket over there. I'm like, how am I going to get a ticket over there? So I was talking to the high school I was at, and I said to them, I really want to go to this contest, but my family doesn't have any money. Can we have like a mufti day or something like that? And they said, yep, you can have a mufti day and we'll collect the money and give it to you. And I said, can I bake cakes as well? And they said, yes. So I started baking cakes and selling toffees. So basically I've supported myself my whole career from day dot. And I was diagnosed when I was young having arthritis. And so I've had many, many challenges. But if I go back to 1993... I was doing really well. I'd won Bells Beach, and then when I got to Japan, that was probably midway through the year, and I was doing really well, and I ended up winning the event. But I had got some flu or something in France. I know you don't want to hear this, but I had really bad diarrhoea when I got to Japan, and for some reason that had triggered my arthritis to be incredibly bad. So I still managed to win in Japan and not being able to move very well. And then when I got back to Australia, there was a few months break. I think it was about 3 months to prepare for Hawaii. And I was freaking out because I couldn't move. Like, I really couldn't move. My arms were stuck like this. My wrists, I couldn't even get my wrist to bend back. My training was basically just swimming in the pool, and I had a guy in Suffolk Park that was a really good osteopath, and he put me on a cleansing diet, like an alkaline diet, and that made me feel quite a lot better. But then as I got closer and closer to going to Hawaii, I started to get way worse, like just worse and worse. And I guess just the stress of going for the world title was starting to really cripple me. And then I went there just knowing that, I'll just give it my best or hopefully even get out there. So I remember arriving in Hawaii, and I was there a month before, and I was still too scared to surf because, if you can barely walk, you don't want to go out in the ocean. So my training became putting my leg rope around the arm thing of a pool, the handle thing to get in, put my leg rope around that, and I would just paddle every day, just keep paddling, and just kept getting massaging, and nothing was working. And I remember things like going to the shop, and to get to the shop, I would walk 10 steps, and then after the 10th step, I was getting so twisted up with my body. So I'd be walking like that, and each step I'd get twisted more and more and more. And then I'd end up just falling in a ball on the ground, just crying, just going, oh my God, I can barely walk, and here I am going for a world title. And my partner at the time, I asked if she could put me in the shopping trolley and push me around. And so I was like, okay, I'll have that and that. And the shopping managers come up and said, you can't get in the trolley. And I'm like, I can't walk, so I need to get around. Anyway, so, a couple of weeks passed and I still wasn't getting better, and I decided to go to a doctor, which I don't normally do. I like to try and fight my battles naturally. And I got to the doctors and I said to her, look, I've got really bad arthritis and I'm going for a world title, so I'd like you to help me. And she's like, looked at me and went, you should be in school. And I'm like, I'm 23. But she just thought, who's this little girl, like, out of school over here? And I said, I'm going for a world title. And I'm like, I can't move. Anyway, she went out of the room, came back in, and basically just stabbed me in the hip with cortisone. And it didn't work. Like, she didn't, apparently you're supposed to get it in the spot that's, the sorest spot. And so it didn't work. Anyway, again, it was getting closer and closer to the event, and I remember Jodie Cooper was staying with me at the time, and she couldn't believe I wasn't practising. She's like, what is wrong with you? Why aren't you practising? I'm like, haven't you noticed how I'm moving? She goes, yeah, but you've got to get out on the surface. I'm too scared. Like, I'm really too scared. I'm pretty crippled up. And I can't remember where, I ran into another Hawaiian surfer, Rochelle Ballard, and she was telling me about this guy in Kauai who does... It's a weird, I don't know what you'd call it. Basically, he says that our body all runs on a time. Like, our pulse is all on time together with the rest of our body. And he said, we need to get your body clock back in time. So I went in there and he's pushing, like, spots here and spots here on my body at the same time. And he's saying, okay, once we get your body in time, you'll get better. And I'm just thinking, oh, great, I've flown all the way over here and there's this guy just going, touch that, we'll get that in time. I'm going, yeah, this is not going to work. Anyway, after being in there, it was supposed to be an hour session. I was in there for 3 hours. And when I left there, I couldn't believe how much better I was walking. Basically, arthritis is kind of like going on a 200k marathon and you've never trained for it. So that's how I'd explain the pain. So it's just extremely... like inflammation, and then the inflammation creates that pain and stiffness. So I couldn't straighten my elbow. Like, I'd try and straighten my arm and it wouldn't work. And so it's getting really close to the event now. There's 5 days to go and I'm thinking, oh God, like, how can I get up? So I'm like practicing at home if I could get up on my fists, and with bent, how do I get my legs between bent arms? But anyway, the event came. It was the morning of, and I was absolutely petrified because I thought, here I am barely able to walk. How am I going to be able to surf? It was Sunset Beach, and it was 10 foot. Something great. And I walked all the way to the water's edge, went out there. As soon as the hooter went, I surfed like there was nothing wrong with me. Could not believe it. Like, I just think when people say about... if someone's been squashed under a car and it's their kid or whatever and they're trying to lift the car up, I believe in adrenaline because I surfed like there was absolutely nothing wrong with me. And I made it far enough. I was going against Nerida Falconer for the world title and I made it far enough to beat her and become world champion. So, yeah. Thank you.
So, what did Jodie have to say about that, given she knew what state you were in beforehand?
I actually remember Jodie being the first one to come up to me and give me a big hug when she found out I won.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. Was there a sense of camaraderie then between you and some of the other ladies on tour where they knew what you were going through, or did you keep it pretty close to your chest?
I think it was pretty obvious the way I was walking down the beach. Like, it was really funny because I am known for being quite a toughie, and it was funny because everyone's like, what the hell do you need to keep you down? Like, So I remember one of the articles, they wrote that I was in a wheelchair getting pushed to the water's edge. And I'm like, that's a little bit over-exaggerating. And I'm like, maybe they got the shopping trolley mixed up with a wheelchair.
Wow. Well, I don't think there are any comparable stories in surfing at all. We have so many stories that we hear in men's surfing that are of, you know, triumph and challenge and all this sort of stuff, and they're wonderful. There's lots of great stories there, but that is just next level. Like I've never seen something like that happen. That kind of change between being on land and in that state, and then the hooter blowing. And so when you came back to shore, did it all come back again? Were you locked up and buckled?
Totally walked, crippled up the beach again.
So the red flag came up and it was all over. You were back to square. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you wake up in the mornings now, do you like make a little siren go off and put on a rashie and pretend like you're in a contest?
No, but I'll tell you a nice thing. When I did win, I got a lei put over me with these tiny little white flowers, and it's kind of like jasmine smelling flowers. So now any time I smell that anywhere, I always think of the world title.
Oh, the scent of victory.
Mm. It was quite funny though, so coming back from having something like that, so I came back the next year and still couldn't get a bloody sponsor. So I ended up living in Byron Bay at the time, and decided to do a massive raffle. So like that's how I started my next year on tour. So it was like, you know, coming back from winning and going through all that, and then still not getting supported, and then going, right, I'll do a big raffle. And then I even announced to everyone, right, I'm stopping, like just trying to get a sponsor, just bullshitting, because I'd never stop. I did it for 20 years. And, I still couldn't get a sponsor.
So starting over is a pretty natural experience, a pretty familiar feeling for you, yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Finally, I got sponsored by Piping Hot, and that was only because Barton Lynch was sponsored by them and got up them and said, you've got to sponsor a female surfer. Like, hello, you've got an Australian world champion. And so I didn't actually get it because of my surfing. I got it because he told him to sponsor me.
Yeah, I'm always shocked at the recent history of surfing culture and how, you know, incredible women like yourself are left out of the media pages and the history pages, and you really embody one of the most empowering, inspiring stories in all of our culture. But I'm so grateful that you're here to share your story, because this is within our lifetime. Like, surfing culture has changed radically thanks to your persistence, thanks to your dedication to sticking with a sport that wasn't sticking by you or supporting you at all. I loved the stories. I remember reading about how you'd approach a company maybe and they'd say, oh no, we're kind of after a blonde right now, right? They were after a particular look, right? And you were darker haired, and so...
Yeah, that was pretty funny. So it was Quicksilver that said it. They said it off record to my coach, and they said, you know, we're not really after someone with your look, we're after someone with the blonde hair. So when I went to America, they love a bit of show, so I decided to do my hair completely blonde white. And then I thought, that's still not enough, so I did a blue mohawk, and then I put glitter all over my face, and then I won the contest really easy. Couldn't believe it. I was just like, do I have to be a show pony to win? You gotta have to be really different.
Oh, so good. I'd love to open up to some questions. If anybody has a pressing question for Pauline. Anybody? Anna, yeah. Are you still surfing?
I am. I'm not surfing as much as I'd like. I'm actually battling another immune disease now. So...
Yeah, you've had a real unfair roll of the dice, and I always feel so grateful when I get to see you in the water, Pauline, because she's still surfing so beautifully with so much power and grace, despite, you know, really facing so much pain on a daily basis that most of us can't relate to in any capacity.
I really enjoy it when I do go out. So, yeah, it's a magical place, the ocean. And when you can't get out there, you really appreciate it.
What does it mean for you? Obviously, it's really an emotional thought, just, you know, being asked if you're getting back in the water. What does it do for you?
Well, I remember about 3 months ago, it was the first time I've been back in the water in a long time. And I wasn't surfing, I just went in the water for a swim and I started crying. I was crying. I was so happy to be back in the water. So when you can't go out there, it's like, wow, this is just amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's such a privilege. Thank you, Pauline.
I'll be all right to talk again. I just, I'm on steroids, so they make you cry. It's not really me crying. Okay, I'll stop now.
Well, yeah. Thank you, Pauline.
Sorry to interrupt the conversation, but we wanted to take a moment to recognize the generous folks who have supported us this season. The Waterpeople podcast is brought to you by the fine folks at Sanuk. In 1997, founder Jeff Kelly started out with one simple goal: to make people smile and to encourage them to pass it on. Sanuk has been advocating for a more playful and inclusive surfing culture for more than 2 decades, while crafting some of the comfiest footwear around. Thanks, Sanuk, for your support and for encouraging water people around the globe to protect their happy places. Learn more about Sanuk's partnership with the Surfrider Foundation at sanuk.com. Thanks also to Gary McNeil Concepts Americas, who build cosmic surfboards for cosmic people. We love Gary McNeil's enthusiasm for building boards, and especially his passion for combining recycled and plant-based materials to craft boards that prioritize durability, sustainability, and high performance. For custom orders and to check out the gallery of boards currently available in the Americas, head to GaryMcNeilConcepts.com. Our next storyteller is one of the quirkiest people that I know. He is a homegrown Byron Bay Steiner kid. He is a teacher. He works with some of the most marginalized children in our community, and he's a self-proclaimed nerd. He's a surf nerd, more specifically, and he's made it his sort of life goal to learn how to ride as many different kinds of boards as possible, and I'd say he has one of the more unusual surfing starting over stories. So I'm going to welcome Raf Browne to the stage. Also author of the bizarre Baywash magazine that you might see around town.
That's correct, yep. Byron Bay's worst magazine. So I guess I'm here because I have what I would call dual surfing personality disorder. So I'm normally like a really confident person, and I've done that through just sort of making myself look like an idiot in most situations, especially on the internet and things like that. And so for me to come up here is actually a really sort of challenging thing, because I have to actually talk about something that I never talk about. And I've had this like kind of secret for like a decade. Well, people know, but it's like, it's just, I've hidden it as much as I can. And so I started surfing stand-up when I was 14 and 9 months. And prior to that, I was a really, really average bodyboarder. I had really long flippers and a really like cool Manta boogie board, and I used to like take myself down to the pass and just hang out really wide and just like bus drive the pass like no one's ever seen. And I did that until around like just before I turned 15, and I was out the front of Mac's Milk Bar, and I was on a razor scooter. Remember when those things took off? They're still going in some certain circumstances. And I did a 180 jump thing, and I put my wrist out and I broke it. And I did like the scaphoid. Anyway, I spent all summer in a plaster cast, and I had to like it was like, I think it was the last time I remember crying, actually. We were at the hospital and I had to cry, and I just remember going, I'm not going to be able to boogie board all summer. There's so many bus driving opportunities about to come up. I was going to be up there. And it was just this like thing, and I went, all right. And my dad surfs and my older brother surfs, and it was just this thing. And I always wanted to stand up, but I never had a reason like to actually take the plunge. And so this was the catalyst. This was the thing that changed me and made me become a stand-up surfer. And I just went, that's it. My older brother had gifted me like a 6'1", really pointy shortboard from the Gold Coast, which I just thought was the coolest thing ever. And that was it. After that summer, I just started stand-up surfing, and I surfed absolutely every day. Like before school, after school, all weekend. Like I didn't really have any friends because I went to school at the Steiner School in Mullum. And so all my friends were over in Mullumbimby and I lived in town. And so I just surfed and surfed and surfed. And it was really cool. And I really enjoyed it and loved it so much. Sort of fast forward 5 years and I'm around 20. And I am a right-footed, right-handed, left-eye dominant person. And I surf goofy. And I'm goofy by nature too, so that obviously makes a lot of sense. And as it sort of evolved, I was surfing the pass a lot because we lived nearby. And I was doing it all the time, and I sort of reached a point in my sort of surfing where I just wasn't progressing. I could surf tallows and get to go frontside, and that was really, really enjoyable. But then, like, backhand at the pass on a small shortboard was just not really fulfilling in the way that I wanted to surf, in the way that I wanted to experience the ocean. And I could see people surfing and people going fast, and I just wasn't getting there. And I sort of became disenchanted, I guess, with surfing because it wasn't being fulfilling. And my friends at the time, they were riding these like really bladed, thin hull boards and just like reaching like trim at the pass, which you've never believed, like just going so quick. And I was just there, and I tried to do it backhand, and I couldn't really achieve that desired feeling that I could see that they were getting from surfing the pass frontside. And I got to a point in my sort of thing where I went, I just might even give up. I just wasn't enjoying it. I didn't get to surf the way I wanted to surf. And so I loved surfing so much, and I just went, okay, so there's two paths I can take here. I either become a non-surfer or I relearn to surf frontside as a regular footer. And I just went, okay, this is it. I'm going to do it. And so I was around 20. I'm 32 now, so I've been doing it for a bit on a decade. And it was a really, really interesting experience all the way along.
And you ended up studying exercise science at university, and wasn't that part of sort of empowering you to see the physiological possibility of switching over?
Yeah, so at uni, as Lauren said, I was doing exercise science, and we were learning about like muscle memory, proprioception, and kinesthetic awareness. So that's like where your limbs are and where everything is in relation to what you're doing. And I learnt in that like everything can be relearnt, and through repetition and just sticking with it, you can learn to do anything. And I just went, okay, this is it. I'm gonna do it. And so I went and found the most trimmy surfboard I could get. It was a 5'3" Donald Takayama fish, and I just found somewhere where there was no one around and just stuck with it and just said, I'm never going to stand up backhand ever again.
And he hasn't.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I want to interject there because I remember seeing you when we both lived at the north end of the Shire and around the Brunswick River area. I always thought there was two Rafs because I would see him at the bar.
That's happened quite a few times, actually. It's like this alter ego. that I sort of have.
Totally. And I remember seeing
Yeah.
you and going, oh, wow, that guy surfs well on that right-hander, forehand. And then another swell would happen or something. It'd be a few months later and I'd see the other guy going left, forehand. I'm like, hey, that guy looks like the other guy who goes right, forehand. And it wasn't until we actually spoke to each other that I realised you were one and the same. And it was really impressive because yesteryear in surfing, there was a real tendency with very skilled surfers to be able to switch foot. And it really went out the window when surfing got so serious with competition and sponsors and all that kind of stuff. But it is a huge part of surfing's timeline, is the ability to switch up feet.
There are a few people who still do. Ashley Lloyd Thompson is another. She's a longboarder out of California. She's a masterful switchfoot nose rider, which is pretty challenging.
Yeah, there's a lot of people do it. Like, I think it's sort of not really accepted almost, or it's just maybe surfing hasn't reached a point where it needs to get to that.
You talk about how, well, we've spoken about how it's been a real ego trip squashing for you to be able to challenge yourself in the way that you have.
Yeah, so on that, like, that's what I talk about with the dual personalities. So when I take off goofy, I can almost do anything I want, like, without, if I forget about being humble, I'm pretty good.
Let me just clarify. So if you forget being humble, you're pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
Cool. Just want to make sure everyone heard that.
That's off record. But so I constantly have to swap between these two levels of ego. So if I'm surfing tallows, I would just paddle around like an absolute nuisance and get any wave I want and just be that kind of nuke, you know? And then if I was surfing...
You feel like you have total control. Like you can see a section and you can bring any kind of turn to fruition that you can imagine in your mind. Yeah,
and I guess surfing has that sort of hierarchy, and the people who do know how to navigate through the lineup, you see, and they can be they're always in the right position. So, like, I had that sort of position thing, and I'd have it at the pass, and I'd go to stand up, and I was absolutely terrible. I'd paddle into a wave appearing as though I could do stuff, and I'd stand there, and I couldn't do anything. I was absolutely terrible. And so, like, when you're there and you don't even know whether your front foot's your back foot or your back foot's your front foot, and then your posture's all wrong, and then you're paddling in, and even your shoulder angle when you take off is different. So you have to, like, reorientate your shoulders. And then your left brain and left hemisphere, right hemisphere are all just tripping out and in turmoil, trying to work out how to make you so you can surf. And, yeah, so I'd paddle in thinking I could do it, and people would, like, go, oh, yeah, sweet, he knows what he's doing. And then I'd just take off and I'd be standing there sort of, like, shell-shocked.
That's like my good surfing.
So this is good. I really like the humbling nature of what you're talking about, and also the lack of seriousness with it. You know, that you got to loosen up a bit and realise that it is a fun pursuit. It can be many things, as we've seen with Pauline. It means a lot to all of us, but always in differing ways. And so for you, you've taken this route of challenging yourself. Do you ever have times where you just say screw it and you forget about it and there's no one around and you just go backside?
No.
You've really stuck with it?
No, I really just went, I'm never going to do it. Doesn't matter where I am, what's going on. If you're going to really dedicate yourself to it, I just went, that's it. There's only going to be one way, and I'll only ever take off front side.
Is it a religious thing? Do you love the ocean so much that you'll never ever turn your back at it, or show it your bum? You don't want to ever have your butt.
Never
face.
Turn your back. Yeah,
don't ever turn your. Is that tattooed somewhere discreetly on your body?
No. And yeah, and so it's been this, like, and so when you would surf the pass, I'd be there paddling in and going, okay, maybe I should just take off backhand and surf how I know how to surf, and not be afraid and fearing everyone that was in front of me, and just you are on display at the pass quite a bit, and just went, okay, I'm just going to go back. And it has been a really amazing challenge to not give in to my ego and be good at something that I knew that I was good at. And I think as it's gone along, there's been amazing little moments too. Like when I would take off, after a little while, I learnt to get low and crouch, and I was going so slow that I'd get barreled all the time. I wouldn't make it out, but I would get barreled. So that was like a really nice little moment where you'd go, okay, this is cool. And eventually you'd sort of learn to generate speed and do turns. And then other really weird things would happen where, like, as you learn to do a cutback, you realise that you roll onto your toes and then project and then roll back onto your heels. And then after a little while, you realise that you can actually double pig dog. So that's what I'd call it. That's if you're taking off on a left and then you take off in pig dog mode. So you could surf double backhand. And
I'm not following you. I'm completely lost. Where does the double bit come in?
I don't know. It just sounded cooler.
Okay.
Well, I guess it's like double. Like you could stand up front side, but you double it around. So you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think maybe something along those lines.
I think you need to write a book of the terminology for us to follow.
I was thinking, something along those lines, like a really long book.
Yeah. 2 volumes. Definitely 2.
Definitely need to edit.
This is interesting. So I went on a boat trip with Brad Gerlach a few years ago, right? Brad Gerlach's an amazing surfer, a really artistic guy, very thoughtful fella who's developed all kinds of kind of martial arts to help you with your surfing, one thing called wave key. But we went on a boat trip and he only went switchfoot the entire time. And he...
So he wasn't like on a right, he was...
whatever it was, he would just
only
go the other
surfing
way.
goofy.
Yeah, so he would only surf goofy. So he wasn't doing your religious non-backside to the wave deal. He was just going switchfoot, right?
Wow.
So, but the amazing... He was probably late 40s, early 50s when this was happening. And this is a guy who's, he was world number 2 in Pauline's era, actually, and just quit the tour. Very accomplished guy, but he was doing it to reprogram his brain and to freshen everything up and just stay in love with surfing. So it's an interesting pursuit, and it's something that people are trying in different corners of the surfing community, but it's just neat to hear that the inner workings of it. And for him, it was fascinating because all of us on the trip were like young fans of this surfer and just wanting to see him do one of his Brad Gerlach turns with this perfect form. But instead, he was pretty much just stink bugging on every wave and occasionally grabbing the rail and doing a very wide-legged turn and coming off hooting and like whistling himself for doing this switchfoot turn. So it was an interesting thing. It would have been very humbling for him as well, which is a great thing in serious lineups around the world. We've got a lot of places that can get pretty serious in the water and take it all, very heavily and everything. And it's just so nice to see that injection of lightness and humility.
It's bold, especially when everything is so documented now, and especially somewhere like your home wave, the Pass, where everything is very stylized, and the man buns and the flowing open shirts and the documentation to go, okay, I'm gonna commit to being my worst surfing self for a while. And everyone's going to see it. And you're an exceptional surfer. So much style and flow, and I'm so jealous of the flexibility of your knees. It's ridiculous. And your ankles. Oh.
But along that line, though, I wonder, I always thought when you watch someone surf and they'd achieved a level of mastery and their real personality would show, right? And on my goofy side, I think it's who I really am, which is it's a sort of a fast, flicky person who isn't very flowy and is really, how would you put it, kind of just going as fast as I can to try and get to the end of the sort of the wave to do something cool. Yep, perfect. And so when I surf regular footed, I think it's a manufactured fake almost version of me, because I put so much energy into learning how to make it something that was pleasing from an observer's perspective, and because when I was doing it, it didn't feel good. Nothing about it felt good. Like there was no aspect of where I was positioning my arms or what I was doing would ever feel, as you would put it, natural. It never felt like that. So my whole existence as a regular footed surfer is almost fake. It's a manufactured thing that I've created to try and make something that works from an aesthetic perspective.
Is it really just self-sabotage?
Yeah.
Okay, we worked you out.
Yeah.
Well done. No, just kidding.
Okay, so what's the payoff then? So you're saying that it is a manufactured experience. So forgetting everything about how it looks or the technicalities or anything like that, like what's the feeling in this whole decision you've made and stuck to that keeps you with it?
It's about overcoming the ability that you can't do something or that you think you can't. And if there is anything out there that you think you can't do, you can do it. You just have to overcome it emotionally and surrender to the vulnerability and the lack of sort of confidence that it creates within you. Like I paddle out and I take off sometimes, and if I've been surfing for a week on lefts and I try and take off on a right-hander, it just doesn't work. It takes waves after wave to reprogram and get back into it. And it gets quicker and quicker as I've sort of progressed along the sort of experience. But yeah, it's a really hard thing to sort of do. And because it's so hard, I think that's what keeps me going back, because it's so difficult. And I think it'll become easier as I go along. But yeah, even still, it's one of the most difficult things, the most difficult thing I've ever done, but the most rewarding. For sure.
Cool. Any questions? Sir.
Okay, so for the recording's purposes, the question was for Raf, where, from this lovely fella talking about seeing someone on a skateboard as a kid going left foot first or however it was, influenced him. And the question is, where does the dominance in what foot it is you place forward come from?
Yeah, so I actually also think I might have developed my goofiness surfing from my older brother, because I looked up to him and he was 13 years my senior and he was goofy and I wanted to be like him. So I was influenced from that, and I wonder if he was regular footed, whether I would have just taken the regular footed path too. I think there must be some kind of like deep-seated thing from the past that determines what way we put our foot forward. Do you know whether you're left eye dominant or right eye dominant?
How do you tell that?
Okay, just make a circle with your hand somewhere and then focus on something out in the room so you can see through it with both eyes open. Now shut one eye and then shut the other, and then whichever eye you're looking through that you can see, that determines your dominant eye. So
What if neither of them are any good? We've been surfing too much lately. Yeah. Your eyes are as red as mine.
Yeah, it's a tough gig. So I think it must be something deep-seated within that determines.
I know I was a competitive gymnast before I was a surfer, and in gymnastics you always have a good side and a bad side, a dominant side and a non-dominant side, and I think we probably start out as quite ambidextrous. Our 2-year-old, he uses both. Sometimes he's mostly right hand dominant, but he'll also use his left hand for random things. So I think it just emerges, and then we pattern into building the wirings that repeat one side or the other. Yeah.
Anyone else? Yeah.
The question was basically, why the fuck are you doing this? Why are you torturing yourself? Why don't you just enjoy it?
Yeah, just be a normal person.
That's a Steiner education.
Is it an anthroposophical foundation that you're carrying with you?
I reckon. I think, somewhere in there. Now, like at the start, it was about that. It was about seeking to find, like I wanted to go back to it all the time and to feel that strength and that confidence that I had backside. But now I don't want to have that. I want to be vulnerable and I want to overcome the challenge of not being able to surf well and in certain circumstances, and then get stronger emotionally, and over the time of doing this, it has really made me get confidence. But the confidence isn't in my body and my muscle memory, it's in my head. And so now I have to just trust myself and know that I can do it even if I can't.
Well, right on.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Raf.
So brave. So awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Raf.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone.
Round of applause.
Thanks, Shan. Jonny Dustow, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm quite nervous. I've peed a lot. But yeah, no, I'm doing really well.
Glad you're staying hydrated.
Yeah, staying
We
hydrated.
are in a brewery.
That's it. Mostly water, 2 ciders. It's going all right.
You are a musician, the frontman of Dusty Boots, 6-person
Yeah, when
collective.
at its peak, it's like 5-6 people, a
Yeah.
sort of funk and coastal folk band. But a lot of times it's solo or duo, or depending what mates are available to jam with. I love jamming with people more than just playing on my own, for sure. The connection.
And you co-founded Vanlife Diaries with some friends, which is a vibrant digital and real-life community of nomadic people who like to hang out and live in vans. And you've made a film about it, published a book, you hold gatherings
Yeah.
around the world.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy with Instagram and social media. Like, I don't love social media, but it can be used for really good things. And I've seen the negative side and the positive side because I'm a high school teacher as well. So I see the negative side with kids and the influence that it can have on young people. But I always just saw the power for good as well. And through like the road tripping community, we started Vanlife Diaries, and it grew so fast on Instagram that we're like, my passion is sharing stories like you guys and connecting people face to face. So we started using online to hold gatherings and meetups, and that's where the real true magic happens, when people are together sharing stories.
And you all have like 500,000 followers on your Vanlife Diaries. Is that
It
right?
went crazy. I
Yeah.
don't know, like it. We definitely don't get much money from it. You'd think 500,000 followers, but we don't really want to be an advertising channel, or so we connect with some brands and get a little bit here and there. But for that many followers, if I was just a bikini model with 500,000 followers, I'd be getting paid $5,000 a day probably. But I'm not.
Might want to look into that.
No, I don't have the figure.
Can you tell us a story about starting over in your life and how
Yeah.
surfing is related to that process of starting over?
Yeah. So I was lucky enough to be born in Byron Bay, in a special place in 1980, a long time ago, when it was a quiet little surf village town. And our dad, we had a farm at St. Helena where the tunnel goes through, and learned to surf at What He Goes in the past. It's a very different place now, as Raf said, and so I find it quite difficult to surf there, but I still go there sometimes. But it was a special place to learn, and I just love this town. And the ocean, Dad took us surfing before school, 4 a.m. before school, and it was just been a really special place to start the day and feel settled. And then going to school, becoming a teenager, I started becoming quite unstable with my mental health, and I'm quite an emotional person. And I grew up with 4 sisters, 1 brother, big family, tight-knit. I was shown beautiful love, and always taken camping, surfing. So I had an amazing upbringing, and I was always treated well, but I struggled with anxiety, depression, and I never went on medication then, but at the age of 30, I got fully stumped with mental health, and it shook me to my core, because I've always tried to I want to be a positive person in life, and I want to give back as much as I can, and I want to be joyful, I want to be genuine, and, well, I want to leave something better than when I came. That's my goal. And at the age of 30, I was eating a bowl of cornflakes. It wasn't a special bowl of cornflakes, but I totally broke down, and I'd never experienced it. It stumped me. I fell to the floor, like Pauline was talking about, but I didn't have arthritis. I didn't have a physical condition, and I just fell to the floor and just bawling my eyes out, and couldn't stop. And it's a tough one. I've been thinking about this for a week to talk about it. I don't like talking about negative things. I want to be positive, but it's something that challenged me so hard in this life. And I think it's really important, because I've lost friends to suicide, and I've, even being a school teacher, lost parents to suicide. And so wherever I go, if I'm playing music, there's always a song that I'll take the time to talk about mental health, and just say, if you're struggling, make sure you talk about it. Because I didn't have a clue what to do. I was 30. You think by the age of 30, you're going to have life figured out. When I was a teenager, I looked to all the 30-year-olds, and you're like, these guys know what they're doing. They're sweet. It must be so easy.
They're old.
Yeah, they're wise. They're old. I get to 30 and I fall on the floor and I'm a mess and I can't get up. And I'm bawling my eyes out. And I was a full-time teacher at the time, just trying to do the best I can. And I was just overloaded myself. I've always wanted to excel and had high expectations. And so I was studying a master's at the time, full-time teaching, had 2 properties, investing in shares, wanted to be successful in the eyes of myself and society, and it just wasn't for me. That pathway wasn't for me. I know it's for some people, and it's amazing if you can, set yourself up so you can really enjoy life and financially, but it just wasn't for me, and I had that nervous breakdown, and just accepted, not that depression defined me or anxiety defined me, but I just accepted that I'm a really emotional and sensitive person, that the ocean has helped so much, surfing has helped so much, and music has helped so much, because these 2 things, like surfing, brings you into the now, brings you into the present, and so it's got something magical that, for an overthinking mind, the ocean just seems to calm us and settle us. And I had to start again. I had to sell all my properties and not have that much money that I thought I'd worked really hard, and start from scratch, and I felt like a failure. And surfing had always stuck with me, but when I'm really low and struggle with depression, I sometimes stop surfing. It's like, I don't know why, but I'd stop it. But I'm self-harming in a way by doing that. And as soon as I start getting back in the ocean, I just force myself to fall in, even without a board. Perspective just comes back, and I go, I'm okay. My life, like, I'm so lucky. I'm instantly grateful when I fall in the ocean.
It's so interesting that you've gone from that sort of like accumulation mentality to van life simplicity, and now you live full-time in your van and are kind of a proponent that other people do the same. Can you talk about that philosophical change in your life?
Yeah, in a way, I think I forced myself to become homeless, and I'm no disrespect to homeless people that it happens to them, but I think I had to start from scratch, and halfway through your life, it's really scary and daunting. But I saw some surfers having beds in their vans, and tradies having beds in their vans, and some musicians having beds in their vans. I had a little bit of money, and I couldn't work for a year. And so I brought a van and put a bed in it, and all the boards and the music gear underneath, and just started hitting the road. And I used to say no to a lot of opportunities with music because I was trying to be focused on a good full-time job, and people were asking me to do tours and play sax for them and those sorts of things. And I just went, stuff it. I'm going to just say yes to any opportunity that comes up and follow my creative passion and follow my heart. And it just opened up just amazing doors, not financially, but it didn't even matter, because it was my heart and my soul and mind just came alive. Being in nature, having a bed in a van, it's nothing. It's like parking, like, obviously you can't do it much here, but parking like a few streets away from the ocean and waking up and just heading straight to your favourite place and not using an excuse, I can't be bothered getting into the car, can't be bothered grabbing my gear. You've got your board under your bed and you're like 2 streets away from the beach. And it just forced me to be outside so much more, hiking and surfing. And the inspiration that came from that year, all the songwriting that has happened with Dusty Boots came in that year, after the hardest time where I thought my life was over.
You said you weren't able to work for a year. Can you talk about what that looked like? I mean, sounds like you were just having a good time.
I was having a good time, but I still had that side. You said dual personality. I feel like I've got it too, but in a different way, that I've got this side of me that goes, come on, you need to work hard, you need to make the most of your life. And it's not from my family or anything, and maybe it's from society. And I've got this other side that just likes to appreciate time to share stories, time to be in nature, time to slow down, and time to surf where you actually are experiencing and connecting with nature and feeling how fortunate we are to live in this country, rather than getting so busy and driving like in traffic jams all day, every day. Obviously, you've got to work at some time, and I definitely do. I work part-time now, and I've found that balance. But I wanted to share a little story about surfing and how it brought me back. I was to the point where I didn't really want to be alive, and this is another few years down the track where I went down low again. And that's the thing. Life is a journey, and it's up and down, and I've learnt to accept myself and accept that a bit more, rather than go, I want to be happy all the time, which doesn't exist. It's more about finding meaning and purpose. And I got so low, this was only a couple of years ago, again, and it was the first time I didn't want to be alive, and I hated that feeling. I didn't want to let my family down, didn't want to let anyone down, but I really, for 7 months, didn't want to be alive anymore. Which life is so beautiful, and the mind can be so powerful in a negative way. And my brother, who's an amazing surfer, way better than me, gave me this opportunity to be a surf guide at Tavarua Island at Cloudbreak and restaurants. And I'm okay. I've surfed my whole life, but I think I'm okay at 2-3 foot beach breaks, not sucky barrel reef breaks. And I just thought, he was almost forcing me to go there. I was being a hermit in a shed on my sister's farm at Kingscliff, and I'd pretty much given up and stopped surfing. And he was like, Johnny, you have to come to Fiji. He was already there. He was like, someone's got injured, gone back to Hawaii. I'm like, oh, cool, a Hawaiian surfer's got injured. I should come there. I've never been there before. I'm just like, what? And he's like, you got to do it. And I just had this weird thought, and it was pretty much stuff it. I've seen pictures of these guys, stand-up barrels, my brother's stand-up barrels. I'd never had a stand-up barrel. I've gotten barrels, beach breaks, but and Indo soft Uluwatu barrels or whatever. And I thought, stuff it. I'm going to head to Fiji. I'm pretty much hating myself, not wanting to be alive anymore. What if I die at Cloudbreak. Who cares? I kind of want to die, like, which is terrible to say, but it's how I felt. And I just thought, what if I've never got a stand-up barrel? What if I tried that and I died? That's all right. And super humbling as the ocean is, humbles you. I got to Cloudbreak, and the second day, it was 12 foot. And I don't know whether it's 12-foot Hawaiian stand. I don't know what it is. It was huge. It was higher than the roofs or something. And I've surfed my whole life and never been out in that. I was just sitting on the boat, and I'm training to be a surf guide to take people surfing. I'm like, what am I doing? This is stupid. And my brother was with me at that point, and he was just like, you just come out and sit with me, sit next to me. I'm like, I don't even want to do this. I didn't even want to surf. And I got out there, and I hesitated, missed a massive wave, got the next set on the head. And have you ever done a tour, a Cloudbreak? Does anyone? It means that pretty much, sometimes if you fall off from a wave, it drags you for hundreds of meters. I didn't even stand up, and I got dragged the whole way from the top line up because I missed that one wave, and all the way through to the tower, and had to paddle back out. And it's like the power of the ocean was showing me in that time, and I ended up getting a couple of waves. No stand-up barrels. Still, I've gotten some barrels. I've been doing it for 3 years now, but and I love it. It's a really special place, but still no full-on stand-up barrels, and that's okay. But the ocean that day brought me back to life in a way, in a weird way. I didn't excel. I didn't do anything special, but it showed me that I actually cared about my life, because I was too scared to take off. I was like, I was too scared to take off on a 12-foot wave. That actually means I do care about dying, because I was too scared to die by taking off on that wave. And yeah, felt really soft, but it actually showed me I care about life, and the ocean has been there for me my whole life to bring me back, and that was just a key moment in my life that I'm just like, so I nearly surf every day now. For the last 2 months, I've missed 2 days. Some days I surf twice. Even if I don't feel like it, I still wake up sometimes, and I don't want to face the world, and I don't want to face my work. I'm still a school teacher. I'm a substitute teacher. I hang in there, and I do it a few days a week and try and help teenagers as much as I can. But and I still play music and still do this. I was scared to do this. Yeah, scared to be raw and honest. And
yeah, this is just like that 12-foot wave on the ledge, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's facing it and giving it a crack. It's really making me think about who you turned to in those times. Like, what was it about just going to the water and having a moment like that happening? Because, you know, there's numbers we can call, you know, there's people we can talk to. But in your situation, in your story here, did you talk to people? Did you call hotlines? Did you do all of that?
Not that time. I have, definitely, because, as I said, I think as you get older, you get more questions. I heard someone old say that once, and it's happened to me. More questions than answers, and still get stumped. So I have called helplines before when I've felt super low, and I have been to psychologists and doctors and have had times on medication. I'm off medication at the moment because I'm just surfing as much as I can, and it's definitely helping me. But I think it's that constant truth that the ocean, whether it's crap, like what Pauline talked about, she just swam and she cried. She didn't even surf. And it's that time I go out now because I just know it's good for me, not because I know I'm going to get good waves or I'm going to push myself or become a better surfer. I go out even when it's terrible surf for 20 minutes, because I think if you hate it after 20 minutes, then come in, but you've still gone out. And it's that truth that it's like our saviour. Instead of alcohol or drugs, or like to try and numb the pain, the ocean does something totally different, and you feel healthy when you come out. You might feel hurt. I've definitely got reef cuts and stuff.
Well, I'm really grateful that you're sharing a story like this, your story, and able to be vulnerable and real and honest. I grew up with a dad with mental illness and lived that for my life with him, so I see how real it is, and yeah, just really want to thank you for sharing on that level.
We're so lucky we live in a time where to talk about our mental health is increasingly normalized, thanks to brave people like you, Jonny. And I know there's been a showing of Happy Sad Man here. Can you talk a little bit about that film? Has it already played?
I think it's tomorrow.
Okay.
Or is it? Oh, it
was
today.
Today.
Genevieve's movie, yeah. Amazing story.
And unbelievable statistics about men's mental health in Australia in particular, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty staggering. But the conversation is happening, and it's happening in a way that perhaps hasn't happened before openly, which is really wonderful. And she's doing a lot of touring with that film, and talking about Fluoro Fridays, the One Wave movement, and just these great efforts to incorporate surfing in those healing ways. We see, we hear, we feel that it is a sport, it is an art, it is a form of self-expression, it is play, and it is also healing and therapeutic.
My life's definitely not the same. I'm not financially successful. I've been in a van for 8 years now. I haven't paid rent or a mortgage. It's a tough lifestyle. It can be really challenging, but it works for me because it gives me the freedom. I still work and I get to travel, and it's so different. The opportunities and relationships and connections that have come my way to get to play music around the world, and also get to surf so many different places and learn from people through conversation. You can learn so much, and I don't necessarily want to always share my story, but I think it's important. If it helps one person feel okay about doing it tough, then that's a success for me.
Thank you. Thanks, Jonny. Thanks for sharing your story. Our next storyteller is also a local lady. She is, we're so fortunate to have her in our community. She is she currently works at the Youth Activity Center, and over the last 2 years has raised about $1 million to keep kids supported and empowered there. And she has a bunch of degrees that I'm going to have to look at my notes for. She has degrees in social welfare, literature, and creative writing. So needless to say, she's got a bright mind and an even brighter heart, if that's possible. Please welcome Rosalie Bryant to the stage.
Hi, Lauren, Dave. Thank you for inviting me here today.
Thank you for coming. Well, I have to say first off that I really, really look forward to seeing you in the water, because I know every time I see you in the water you are stoked. Like, properly very, very happy. A really wonderful face to see in the water. So
thank you.
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you to you guys for what you're doing with the Waterpeople podcasts, reaching into the diversity of our surfing community and bringing out so many amazing voices over the last year or so. So I feel really blessed to be invited here today. Thank you.
Our pleasure.
We're so lucky to have you as an elder in our local community. You know, the female elder in the surfing world is a rare and, from my perspective, coveted creature that we need to hear more from. So please, will you tell us a story about starting over in your life?
Sure. Before I start, firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge the Arakwal people, who are the traditional custodians of the sea country that we enjoy here so much in Byron Bay, and also the land that we're meeting on here today. I want to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to any other First Nation people that are here with us today. So the day that my life changed forever, it was raining hard. It was raining so hard that the tree snakes were actually hanging out of the trees like wretched limp flags. I'd let my daughters Ella and Kiani walk to school in thongs that day, which they were pretty happy about because they were like 6 and 9, and it was like, yeah, breaking the school rules. But they were also a little bit worried that they might get in trouble for breaking the school rules. So I reassured them that everything was going to be okay. But it wasn't. I was wrong. Life never unfolds the way we think it will, because that morning as the rain hit on my windows, I got a phone call to tell me that my husband had died. And so just like that, in the space between raindrops, I became a widow at 38. We think of widows as being old people. So to imagine becoming a widow, Snow was 38 as well. We'd just had her birthdays 2 weeks before. It's unthinkable. It's incredibly hard to explain. Snow had been a incredible human. He was extraordinary. He was an incredibly talented artist who was able to capture our surfing culture with airbrush on canvas. And he'd learnt from some of the early airbrush guys in the surfing field back in the day. His first job was he worked for Bob Cooper, spraying surfboards when he was 14 years old. So he'd come from that early history of surfing. He was a champion of the Surfrider Foundation when it was in its early days. He was an eco-warrior for Mother Earth and the ocean. He was a skilled surfer and a fantastic dad. He was a fast friend to people as well, but he was more than that. He was my person. And so without him, I didn't actually know who I was anymore. So that year I discovered an ocean inside myself. It surged and crashed inside me. It poured from my eyes. I cried every day. Whenever I was on my own. When I was on my own driving in the car. In darkened theatres while I watched my kids perform on school plays. And it still doesn't do it justice to what it was like. That ocean that was inside me, some days I rode the waves of that grief with determination and courage, with my head up, really determined that I would make decisions that my future self and my children would look back on and be satisfied with. Other days, my ocean drowned me. It pulled me down. It dragged me across the broken rocks at the bottom of my despair. It drowned me. It held me down. Now, Snow had been teaching our girls to surf, and I thought that that was a really important thing to keep going for them. So every afternoon, no matter how I was feeling, when the school bell rang, I would dry my eyes and I'd go, right, we're going surfing, and we'd take Snow's Old Mall down to Clark's Beach. Oh my God, that board was so heavy it took all three of us to carry it to the sand. I'd push the girls onto waves until they'd done, and then I'd ride a few waves myself. Now, at that stage, I actually thought that I was giving my daughters the gift of surfing. But what actually happened was I gave that gift to myself, because surfing claimed me as one of its own, and one wave at a time, it saved me. You see, the thing is, at that point in my life, I didn't actually see myself as a surfer. I saw myself as a water woman. I can't actually remember a time when my love for the ocean wasn't there. You know, I had said to you before, Lauren, perhaps that abiding love began as I floated in the dark, salty sea peacefully inside my mother's womb. I was born into a family that was diametrically opposed when it came to surfing. I had a dad that was a really experienced body surfer, confident waterman, and a mum who couldn't swim. So you can see I take after my dad. So my dad taught us to body surf when we were little, like way before we started primary school. And there was a whole range of surfboards that followed, starting with little foam kickboards, and then there was rubber mats, and then there was the foamy, which actually back in the day was actually just a piece of styrofoam shaped into the shape of a surfboard. No fins, nothing. It was just a piece of foam. And then, of course, there was like hollow plastic shortboards that took on water if you rode them for too long, because they were just like sealed with glue or something like that, I think. So anyway, when I was 16, I got my driver's licence, and a friend lent me a Shady Mountain Shooter shortboard. So I was thinking, yeah, I'm pretty cool. Got my driver's licence, got a surfboard. Well, I got a rude awakening is what I got, because I paddled out at my home break, which was Crescent Head, to find out girls didn't surf. And I was like, what? You know, these are guys that I had surfed with in the Shoreys for years, who I went to school with, who were good friends of mine, who were all just got like going, yeah, nah. Back in 1979, girls' jobs at the beach was looking after your boyfriend's towel and buying Chico rolls so that he'd have something to eat when he got out of the surf. And it had actually been okay for me to surf while I was flat-chested, but now I had breasts. I belonged in a bikini on the beach. You know, it was definitely true what you were saying before, Lauren, that, you know, it was a different world for women who wanted to surf in the 70s and the 80s. It was just not okay. So anyway, eventually I tried. I persevered, but eventually gave up surfing and chased water adventures wherever I could. So I bought myself flippers, and I taught myself to body surf bigger waves at beaches like Bronte, and free dive the Sponge Garden at Clovelly, and you know, I got on board open ocean yachts and did yacht racing and took up sailboarding, learnt to ride a sailboat in the sea, and still there was something missing. So I decided I'd join the surf life saving movement, where I learnt to swim in big, deep ocean currents and paddle super heavy rescue boards in challenging conditions, and the sheer thrill of actually driving a rubber duck rescue boat in the surf. Now, that was pretty thrilling. But still there was something missing. And of course that was my first love, which was surfing. So I think there must have been a little bit of water magic that was sprinkled into that old Mal of Snows. Because at a time when I didn't know who I was, it helped me to remember and recover that, and it helped me to decide what I wanted for my future. And surfing became my church, my religion, and I've been surfing ever since. So recently I had an experience that reinforces to me that perhaps death is not the final ending. Perhaps it's actually a new beginning. So I found myself in Fiji as well, steaming out of Frigates Reef. Wow, what a wave. And with a boat full of tenacious water women. And I get to that break and it's gnarly. And I'm used to surfing like soft little pass. Any rate, I just happened to turn around to one of the girls on the boat and said, "What day is it?" And when she told me the date, it was like that long ago sea that was inside me began to surge and foam again. Because when I looked at my watch, I realised it had been exactly 17 years and about half a minute since Snow had died. What are the chances? None. So I've hit the water and it's like that ancient sea inside me has washed me up onto the shores of my past heartbreak. My tears are pouring. My throat is hurting so much, it's so tight I can hardly breathe, it's stinging. And the waves coming out of that deep ocean and hitting Frigates Reef were big. And I was riding a log, a 9.2 heavy board, and I had a faint heart. Not a good combination. So I also sat there hesitating, going, what am I going to do? And then eventually I also had this moment and I just went, like in my head, I just went, Snow, this one's for you. And I've paddled into the biggest, heaviest wave of my life. And wow, that wave, oh my God, it was like siphoning water up off the reef into this great groaning mouth behind me, and I'm just flying along, and it was like this echo in the back of my head going, don't look back, keep going forward. And then there's the other voice in my head going, yeah, Rosie, and don't look down on that reef either, because that would have got messy. So at any rate, I proned out, I got off that wave just before it shut down and paddled across the bubbling reef. My legs are shaking, my heart's racing, paddled over to the boat that's waiting in the calm on the other side. And then as we're motoring back, steaming back to the surf camp, I looked up at the sky and I just threw it up there and I said, Snow, if you're here with me now, please give me a sign. And about 10 seconds later, the skipper yells, whales! And out of nowhere, this massive pod of pilot whales has come up out of the water to surround our boat. And then he goes, I think you can swim with them. And he just leapt over the side into the water. And without thinking or hesitating, I did the same. Just leapt straight into the water. And as I've hit it, it's like so dark blue you could cut it. And I realised, oh my God, I'm actually out here in the middle of the ocean and the boat's floating away. And I just thought to myself, what does it matter? I've survived an ocean inside myself. I've got this. And I just took a big, deep breath and I dived down to meet the whales. That's it.
Thank you, Rosalie.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm just curious, have you thought before this whole story unfolded and everything happened, was there ever a thinking that surfing would be like a form of therapy, a form of healing for you? Like you were speaking of it always being in there, that first love that was in there, and there was always something missing, even though you had these yacht experiences and surf life saving and these other expressions and ways to access the water. But I'm just really curious about that side to it, of surfing being a type of therapy. And I was just wondering, had you spoken with anyone about how surfing can help you in times like that, or is there anything like that at all for you?
Well, I read many years ago one of the first books that was ever written by a Indian yogi who basically said, if you can't do yoga, swim. So I started out swimming really early because my mum as a non-swimmer, I terrified her because she was constantly finding me at the bottom of swimming pools where I was just like diving off diving boards at 3 and frog swimming around the bottom of the local Olympic pool. So she basically went, right, this kid's got to get in swimming lessons. So because I've got that muscle memory, if I get in a pool and swim, I'm completely suspended. It's like it's just like counting down numbers. It's like you're meditating. Mindless, completely floating. Just similar, I guess, to what I was saying about maybe it's like being in the womb.
Yeah, I'm really curious about this part of surfing because it's not a story we really hear that often, right? So I've been fortunate in my surfing life to be around a lot of different kind of surfers, to be around a lot of writers in surfing and a lot of different characters. And I've only really heard of surfing as a support system for when you're in the shit in some way, from random conversations with people. Like Robbie Page, who's a surfer from the 90s who is an amazing character who's led a very wild life. And he mentioned just off the cuff once to me when I was a grommet that surfing saved his life when he wound up in some serious trouble overseas and different things happened. It really saved his life. And it was just this one tiny comment. And then for me, when I went through either relationships ending or my dad's departure or moments that are really real, it was his single line that came back to me and helped me in those times. Yeah. And it makes me wonder, are we missing out here by not sharing these kind of stories with each other so that we know the importance that the water can have for us in really sincerely deep and turbulent times?
And I think importantly, that message really only comes from intergenerational relationships. You know, when we're hearing from our elders, because kids aren't going to have those stories of deep and disturbing experience where surfing has resuscitated them in a way that someone who's lived a rich and wild, watery life, will have to share.
Well, I think it would be interesting to see what Raf says, because we've got this massive percentage of salty water in us. Like, isn't it like 90% or something of our body is water? So, like, my analogy of an ocean inside us is very true. We are born inside water and it's part of us. So absolutely, definitely a therapeutic tool. Not necessarily if you're surfing the pass on a big day. I wouldn't say that's necessarily good for you, your calming. But yeah, I definitely think there's that. And I've also had the experience previously. I had a really bad accident off a horse when I was about 32 and I had a head injury and I couldn't actually have a conversation. This is before I did any university, before I did 10 years of university. I actually couldn't hold a conversation. I couldn't walk. My face was broken in 3 places. I messed up my shoulder. I was in a back brace and swimming saved me. It saved my life, really. So
it's like retraining your waters.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, I would actually. We're recording this session here today, and it'll be shared with people through the interweb, and it'll be neat to hear from people on this sort of theme and this stream that's been running through all of this today, which feels like there's a healing element to the thing we do with riding waves, no matter how it's done, backwards, forwards, on whatever it is that you're riding. And it's interesting. It's just interesting to me, because it's obvious how much it means to us, just mentioning it when Anna asked if Pauline gets in the water.
Yes.
The response
yeah.
was obvious and immediate. It means a lot to us.
Yes.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's keep talking about it, and that, you know, that's really why we're here doing this.
Thanks to our storytellers, Pauline, Raf, Jonny, and Rosalie, for sharing so generously at our second ever live recording session. And thanks to the folks at the Byron Bay Surf Festival for having us once again. Special thanks always to our live musician and sound engineer, Shannon Soul Carroll. On behalf of myself, Lauren Hill, and my partner in rhyme, Dave Rastovich, thanks for making the time to listen with us. We'll be continuing the conversation on Instagram, where we're at Waterpeople Podcast. You can find every episode on our website, waterpeoplepodcast.com.